Just explain that for people. Like, what is nervous system regulation, and what is the role of nervous system regulation in high performance?
Sure. So when I think about nervous system regulation, I think about, again, I use a car analogy. It's very easy. Is we want to be able to go in and have routine maintenance in our car. We want to change the tires. We want to change the oil out. We want to make sure all the fluids are good. So that way, when we do need to speed up or press the gas pedal down, specifically in high performance, we are able to do so without having to worry about it. Mm-hmm. And so what I often see is so many guys running around, if their life is a car, they've got all of these sensors and lights on and they're ignoring them, and then they wait until they break all the way down. Whereas nervous system regulation allows for those things to just run more fluid, and you can allow for yourself to go for a longer distance at still a really great rate of speed, but without breaking fully down. Because what happens is if you wait too long, just like a car, and all of a sudden that now all of your things need to get fixed, it's not only that you just need to go in and change your oil, which would only have taken you 45 minutes. Now you have to change out your tires, your engine went out, your carburetor, and all of these other things that I'm not even versed in. But all of these go out, and now you're out of commission for 2, 3, 4 weeks. And how detrimental is that for you to get back online? And so when it comes to nervous system regulation, we can get into really helping ourselves create a baseline of being in a coherent state, which basically all that really means is being in sync, not feeling too overly stressed for an extended period of time, and actually being able to bring ourselves back down to a baseline that's actually going to be really beneficial for us. Because at the end of the day, when we think about high performance, is working really hard and having a great work ethic. But if you are operating at 75% of your capacity, or you're just totally absent because you broke all the way down, then what good is your work ethic?
Absolutely. And it's the conversation between the two, mm-hmm. right? You were saying that before. It's the head and the body.
Yeah. So it's the heart and brain coherence. And the interesting thing, as I've learned through my time with Dr. Joe Dispenza as a certified trainer for his company, is, heart and brain coherence, the heart and the mind, or the heart and the brain, they're essentially a mirror to one another. They have 18 inches, essentially, for most of us, between the brain and the heart. So whatever the heart does, the brain starts to do, and vice versa. So if you find yourself feeling very anxious, oftentimes one of the easiest things to notice is, one, we'll start to get a little sweaty, of course. That's what happens when you get stressed or anxious. But also, your heart starts to beat. You've heard people say, my heart's beating out of my chest. Yeah. Well, if my heart's beating really, really fast, the brain is checking in with the body and says, oh, Pat is really anxious. We need to be on alert for something. So what does it do? It cues the mind to race really, really fast. Mm-hmm. And when it does, this is when individuals get into overthinking, becoming overly analytical, mm-hmm. always worrying. But all they're really saying when they're experiencing that is that their brain has sped up really, really quick, and they're incoherent, and they don't know how to slow it down. But when we can learn how to slow our brain waves and our heart down, it allows for us to get into that more coherent state, which is essentially, when you think about people talk about being in flow, all they're saying is their heart and their brain are running in sync.
Explain what leadership language means, and why words are so important.
Oh yeah. So this is one of the things that I've been more fascinated with recently. I went back and got some certifications through the group called the Enlifted Method, and leadership language that I've coined it as is just how individuals show up based on the way that they speak. And so this is all derived from my work with the Enlifted Method, but leadership language is how you communicate both externally and internally. And so if we think about, and anybody could do this right now, is if you go into a room, and we might know some of these people, whether they're colleagues, whether they're clients, whether they're friends or family, who always come in and say, I should do this. Talk to them 6 months later. I should start doing this. I should start working out. I should start hitting to the gym. And every single time, what that does is that starts to create a mindset that, I should start doing this. And every single time, it diminishes their confidence. So if we think about a leader, we want to communicate effectively. We want to lead our team confidently because, again, it's a top-down approach. And so how we speak is very important. And if you wrote down and use this sentence stem, I should, ... write down the thing you've been avoiding. Read that out loud, understand how that sounds. It's disempowering. I should do this. And then the person on the other end who you're talking to, if you're saying it externally, notices that, and they get to feel that. And that diminishes your credibility, specifically as a leader. Now, if it says, I could do that, you could write that down, read that out loud, Notice how that one shifts. That can shift. Oh, I could do that. It's almost like a question mark at the end.
Yeah.
Like, oh wait, there is possibility instead of doubt. Oh, I should do that, or disempowerment. Then you can go even a step further and you can write down, I can do this. And you're thinking, oh, you're right. The only difference between I should and I can is just a mindset shift and realizing that that is possible for me. And that in itself is the tone, the change. And if we think about words create stories in our head. Beliefs are made up of just little words. And so the words create the stories, and if we repeat those stories enough time, now we have this belief in our head, and now that's the way we see our life through. So if I keep saying, I don't, I can't, I won't, I'll never get there, then guess what? The story is, yeah, you're never going to excel. The belief is that I'm not good enough, and now I literally, every single thing that I see reaffirms that, because I can only see it that way. But if we go back in the most simplest way, and I believe it was my friend told me, Leonardo da Vinci, he said, simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication. And so how can we go back? We can go back to the words. I will never be able to get to that point. I will get to that point. And if you track that, and that creates the story, that then creates the mindset, that then dictates how you show up and the actions you take, that's why words matter. And so I've found it really fascinating, and I've got to examine this for my own self,
Sure.
and understanding when I'm living in a victim mindset, when I'm telling myself that I can't do something, and start to reframe that. And that is just some of the easy tactical things individuals can do in the moment to start to shift their mindset. Because if you notice that, just like we talked about before, when you're at that fork in the road and you're about to say, I'll never be able to get there, or I can do that, and it may take some time, it's a totally different perception, and the actions you'll take as a result of that are drastically different.
Yeah. And I would assume too a completely different feeling around it.
Yeah.
Right? Your entire perspective around whatever it is drastically different just from that little switch. I'm curious though, right? We spend so much of our day talking.
Yeah.
So much.
Yeah.
Whether it's at home, at work. I know you gave an example of just the should to can and even including could. What are some things, or what are some protocols or things that you might be thinking about when you want people to just start bringing awareness to the language that they're using?
Well, first and foremost, I would say if you start to notice how you're speaking and then write that down and actually see it on paper, or for instance, you may ask for feedback from a significant other or a client or a colleague. And what you'll notice is by seeing it from an external lens, it can really start to shed some light on that. So that could be one thing that would be really easy to bring awareness to. Now, the other thing you talked about was we do talk all day long. Not only do we talk externally to people, friends, significant others, family, clients, but we also have this going on all day long.
Correct.
And so in our mind. And so while words are small, if you actually multiply it by the amount of times we've said words, how much impact does that actually have? So I always just remind ourselves, like, everybody can put off words and that, they don't really matter that much. And while they're small in the actual size, the volume or the amount that they're used can be really, really big. And so it's important to realize, like, yes, they're small, but they're mighty, if you will.
Sure.
And
they dictate your action.
Yeah, they dictate your action. And then you reaffirm that, and then it gets you go back to saying that. And so the other thing that I would also share is, if you're wanting to become more aware of that, just start to point out and seeing it in other people. Because it's very easy, and we may all have someone in our life that we know, that every time you go around them, they say, well, he did that to me, she did this, they did this. And what they're really saying is they are letting other people have the power over their lives.
Yeah.
When you replace the he, she, they, and you put I did this to me, I made me feel this way, it can be a little bit difficult to hear it that way, but it puts you back in the driver's seat. And I think that's very important. So you can start to become aware and analyze other individuals' communication. And then by being able to see how that shows up, you start to build a model of understanding for yourself. So when you hear yourself say that, stop, retract, take out the don't, take out the can't, take out the might, and say it again, and watch how that changes.
So you're talking about being in these rooms with Fortune 500 folks, professional athletes, people where there's a lot of high stakes, right? And so there's this pressure that exists. Maybe there's this pressure for you in terms of just leading and being in the space, but maybe also a lot of pressure on them in terms of their performance, how they're showing up, and different things like that. What do you do as a facilitator or a space holder that allows you guys to be able to meet each other so that you can start cultivating some of that trust, knowing the direction of where some of your work is going to be going?
Well, I think very early on, I'm very transparent that, hey, I don't know more about your business. I don't know more about your profession than you do. So I will never be giving you any advice. So let's just put that off the table. Let's just put the business side of things off the table, and let's just come in as humans, coming in as having this conversation. And that alone can create this level of evenness, if you will. It doesn't matter the title, doesn't matter how much money they make, it doesn't matter what role they're in. We're coming here to work on you. Me to you. I'm going to put my coaching hat on. I'm not going to be your friend. At times I can be your friend, but I'm going to let you know, hey, we're moving out of friend mode. Yeah, I asked you how your weekend was, how your family's doing, all this stuff that's going on. But I'm going to take off my friend hat and I'm going to put on my coaching hat. And that alone can really start to shift the dynamic. And then the other thing for me that I've noticed is, I've talked about it before, is that they are no different than any of the guys that I've worked with. So whether they're someone just getting started out or whether they are an executive or a former professional athlete, at the end of the day, most of the individuals that I work with, specifically guys, are dealing with the same stuff. And so when I can see it from that lens, then it's a less of a pressure for me. And then finally, the one last thing that I've been taught is that, you want to keep your breathing low and slow. If you can keep your breathing low and slow, keep yourself calm, keep yourself cool, they're going to be able to do the same. And so it's the idea of like when you walk into a room where you can feel the tension. We've all been there before. Sure. You walk in the room and you feel the tension. If I walk into a client session and I'm tense because I feel like they are way ahead of me in a certain area of life, which most of the time they are, and that's 100% okay.
Sure.
But if I bring that tension in, they're going to bring that tension in, and me being able to get through to them, their guard's already up and it never works.
Yeah.
So by me coming in and doing the work that I do and making sure that I take care of myself and bring myself down into a more regulated state, it actually brings the walls down for them to open up a little bit more and for us to have more of a fluid conversation than if they were coming in with lots of tension.
Tell me about a workshop that you've led recently or training that you've led recently that has just left like a really, really big impact on the audience.
Oh, so one thing that comes to mind is, I was just on a conversation with the workshop I led. I led this workshop almost a year ago, and I had a call and conversation with one of the past participants. And I would say one of the things that really, really stuck out was him coming to me and saying that all the things that he learned in that workshop were still being utilized to this day. And that not only was he noticing it, but his wife would always continue to tell him how if all the coaches that he's worked with, which he said he's spent $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 on coaches, that this was the best investment that he's ever made. And so this is just a reminder, like this stuff seems very simple and it seems like, oh, I don't really need that. But when it's put into a way of understanding that can amplify individuals' personal and professional life, it can become really, really big. Another one that I'll use as an example is I spoke at a talk a few weeks ago to about 100 of Charlotte's realtors. And I had nearly 40 individuals in the crowd reach out to ask for a specific resource that I told them I would share with them for showing up. Now, the interesting thing about that is that means that 40 of them had similar symptoms or struggles that I had shared in that presentation that prompted them to want to get that. And so what's crazy is how many of those individuals do you hear talking about that? 40 individuals wanted that resource because something about a struggle or problem or thing they're working towards resonated with them, but how many of them in their actual industry are talking about that? And so that's interesting because when you do it in a workshop setting, you actually break down the barriers. You see that, oh, there's 100 other people here and 40 other people raise their hand. Oh, I can actually raise my hand now and talk about this. And that's really empowering for me to know that there are people out there that are silently struggling, but if you give them the space, if you give them the opportunity, they will really, really open up to you, and then that's when they really get to flourish.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Everyone thinks that they're dealing with their own problem themselves. They think only them, right? And to your point, they raise their hand and then, oh, wow, I could put my hand up too because 39 other people did, which is empowering because it's like, oh, phew, that weight gets lifted. It's like, oh, I'm not the only one.
Right. And I share that even with my own coaching is I share a lot of this and I help individuals through this, and I have my own life.
Sure.
I have my own shit that I deal with just like anyone else. I'm no different. I'm not perfect. That's for dang sure. And being able to, make sure that that's very clear and knowing that I work through this stuff too is also why a lot of my clients trust me, because they realize like, oh, at the end of the day, he's not trying to be the know-it-all. He's not a know-it-all coach. Sure. He's a great questions asking coach. He can be insightful, but he also can meet me where he's at. Why? Because he has those own experiences of dealing with a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah, the relatability.
Sure.
Just being able to switch that on and off is powerful. You mentioned giving a resource to people who followed up with you. When you're in those arenas of speaking to these larger groups, what's an exercise or a tool that you recommend to all the audiences and why?
Two, actually. One thing that I do, and I've done this multiple times, and I always think it's funny, is that I will go into talking about heart and brain coherence and why it's so important and that we need to really take care of ourselves first in order for us to take care of everything external. Because when I go in and talk with, whether it's at a bank or whether it's to realtors or whether it's to a small business, at the end of the day, all they really want to know is how is this going to be a great return on my investment, which I think that is important, of course, being in business. And at the same time, that's them very focused on the external. But what they don't realize is they need to take care of this first. And they think that this is some new, or they either think it's new or this is abstract, like, I don't really know about that. But what I ask them is, all right, I want everyone in the room to point to themselves. I want you to point to you. And if you were to do the Griffin, what would you do? Right? And intuitively you point to your heart. And I tell them, look around the room. Hold it where you're at, look around the room. How many people are intuitively pointing to their heart? Because inherently we know if we can take care of this, everything else gets easier. And so then I ask them, well, let's try it out. And so we utilize what's called the heart coherent breathing method, which has been studied a ton by the HeartMath Institute on police officers, on first responders, on office workers, on military, and so many different individuals. And it's very simple. It's literally 4 seconds in the nose, 4 seconds out the nose. But the key here is bringing the attention and focus to the heart center when you breathe in, allowing for that to expand on the inhale. And on the exhale through the nose, you're letting it deflate like a balloon out of the heart and chest area. And what it does, we talked about it earlier, heart and brain coherence, it sends signals to the heart if it's in stress or in fight or flight, hey, let's bring us down to balance. And when it does, not only does the heart go into coherence, but the brain goes into coherence. And if you do that for just a couple minutes, the studies show, and I've done it with testing with not biofeedback or neurofeedback or biofeedback right on the ear, and you can simply show that by doing that, it will change. And then also, you can start to think about specific emotions like gratitude or joy or appreciation. And by thinking that alone, it changes that coherent state.
Sure. Why? So I like that, and I like the idea of pointing to yourself because it's funny. No one's doing this.
No, they never do.
They're all pointing here.
But we live up here half the time.
We live up here, right? And so that's really interesting. I also think it's great because you're able to see each other in the space doing it. And for you, so when you're doing these trainings, when you're doing these workshops with a larger group, why are those so effective?
Well, I think just in general, it's the ripple effect. If I can speak one to many, and there's 100 individuals in the room, and let's say, for instance, I did one at a regional bank here a few months back, I think it was late last year actually, and it was 100 of their top producers, okay? 100 of their top producers, which means that they work with either more clients or higher level clients because they're talking about financial services. So more money or more volume, so more people. So it's a ripple effect. So not only are they top producers, so they have a big impact, but they have people that they work with that must have a big impact if they have a lot of money, and it continues to trickle. So to me, that's one of the biggest things is, for me, I'm just one person, but my mission is to impact tons of people. So how do I do that? Well, if I go into a room where I can share what I know, my expertise, and give them a taste of what I do, and they actually implement it, or something shifts for them, or just a simple mindset shift, that can impact them. It can impact their clients. It can impact the businesses that they work with. It can impact their family and hopefully their kids and hopefully their kids' kids. And so I think that's what the coolest part about that is I can only reach so many people. And I've actually, built my business that way so it can be a bit more personalized when I do work with individuals one-on-one. But outside of that, I do want to still make a big impact, but there's only one of me. And so how do I do that? That's through these trainings, workshops, and speaking engagements.
That's really cool, right? The idea of just reaching as many people as possible and not watering down, right?
Yeah.
Keeping it, I guess, as personalized to the way that you want to deliver the message. One of the things too, when you say that, especially using the bank, for example,
right?
One of the things too I think about when you share that is the idea that, right, going back to language, going back to all of a sudden they're getting modeled the same thing. So it's not just one individual you're talking to, right? You have the ripple effect.
Yeah.
But then they walk out of that place and all of a sudden maybe they're in teams with each other, maybe they're leaders together, and they have shared language and shared tools that can help, hopefully, in your world, help stick more effectively, because now you don't have one individual talking about it, you have 100.
Yeah. Well, I used one of the first workshops I ever did, actually. It was a real small business. There's about a team of 14, and it was really funny because I talked to them, a few weeks later, and some of the tools that we were using were some of these like pattern interrupt tools to allow for them to get out of some of the language patterns they're using and these beliefs that they were continuing to act out on. And they made an agreement within the office is that, hey, if you're good with it, out of respect, as long as I do it in a respectful way, not a malicious way, I want to be able to call you out for it, and I want you to do the same for me. And that level of accountability for me not being able to be there after a workshop is so important, because when they do that in the office, it becomes contagious, and then it's not just one person doing it, but it's the whole team. And when the whole team does it, now it's a culture change, and that's one of the real cool things to see.